Now, who are Adam and Eve? Well, I think there's three possibilities, either Jin and Sun, Rose and Bernard, or Jack and Kate, but my gut tells me it's one of the first two pairs. I think it could be Sun and Jin because it would be a nice happy ending for their characters on the show. They've essentially dedicated their lives to finding each other, and they've never given up looking for the other. Also, Sun even left her own child to find Jin. The black and white stones found on the Adam and Eve bodies could symbolize the yin and yang, like the oneness of Jin and Sun, or it could symbolize Rose and Bernard in a more literal black and white way. As we know, Rose and Bernard just want to live together. Maybe they made their way to the caves before the incident to die together. Now, I talked about this in another recap, I forget which one, but the producers promised an anagram in the episode Not in Portland that would be a clue for this mystery. Now remember room 23, that was the one where Carl had the glasses on and he was forced to watch that video. Now that whole gibberish scene is actually in backwards English, and if you reverse it, it states, "Only fools are enslaved by time and space." Now that's actually an anagram. If you switch the words around, the letters around in that phrase, it actually states, "Bones of Nadlers may be lost deep in cave." And as we know, Nadler is the last name of Rose and Bernard. The only reason I think there's a possibility it could be Jack and Kate is because Jack took the stones, remember back in season 1, and didn't show them to anyone. Maybe he still has them. But as of right now, I think it's 49% chance it's Jin and Sun, 49% it's Rose and Bernard, and the other 2%, I guess, just Jack and Kate. And also, Adam and Eve are placed side by side, which they weren't before, and are near the coffin, which they also weren't before as well. And before they even entered the caves, Hurley says, "That's Shannon's inhaler," as they find it on the ground. The reason they even brought it up was probably because of the Q&A session at Comic-Con '09, where Jorge Garcia asked Damon and Carlton at the mic about what happened to Shannon's inhaler if Sawyer didn't take it, and they laughed it off as not being even important enough to answer, at least at the time. After some more trekking through the jungle and some more Jack tears, the two finally reach the lighthouse. They go inside and reach the top, where they find a wheel surrounding a bowl of fire next to a bunch of mirrors that reflect the firelight. As we can see here, there's a bunch of names on the wheel with the same numbers attached to them as they were on the cave wall last episode. I won't go over every name, but just some of the more important ones, or the ones I didn't see on the wall in last week's recap. 19, Nguyen. Isn't that Tila Tequila's last name? Maybe she's a candidate. 51, Kate Austin, which if you look in a mirror at it, would be 15. Maybe like she's a mirror reflection of Sawyer, who's 15. 109, Friendly, or Tom Friendly. 117, Linus, or Ben Linus. And 124, Michael Dawson. But the most important one that we see, at least the one that Jacob says to turn the wheel to, is number 108, Wallace, who we don't know yet, but I'll talk about at the end of this recap. And like I was just saying, Hurley tells Jack that Jacob says that they have to turn the wheel to 108, and so they begin to turn the wheel. So as the wheel turns, Jack can see images appear in the mirrors, and we see some oriental house in the mirrors, which looks a lot like Jin and Sun's wedding site, where Jacob touched them. And then we see the church where Sawyer was as a kid, when Jacob touched him there. But when Jack makes Hurley come over to look at the images, all Hurley sees is the ocean's reflection. Jack then grabs the chain himself and turns the wheel to his number, which is 23, and when it gets there, they see a reflection of Jack's childhood home. I think it's interesting how when we get to Ford or Quan, we see the place where Jacob touched them, but when we get to Jack's name, we don't see the place where he touched them in the hospital, but we actually see his childhood home, or Christian's home. Maybe this means that Shepherd was originally supposed to stand for Christian and not Jack, and maybe it's this house where Jacob touched Christian or met Christian. Even though I don't think this is the case, I think it's still Jack. Maybe Jacob used Jack to get Christian to come to the island even though he was dead. But it is interesting that they make a point of Jack saying, "I haven't lived there since I was a kid." Jack freaks out and insists that Jacob's been watching all of them and wants to talk to Jacob right now. We can also see that number 23 is Shepherd, just like on the cave wall, but it's in all caps and it looks like something else was erased underneath it, similar to Gerard, Quan, Ford, and the other Losties that we know well. It looks also like different handwriting. So why are the names Shepherd and Gerard darker and larger than the names around them? Well, it could just be a prop design to make the names stand out more to the casual viewers, the people who don't watch these videos or go online to check the pictures. But it could show that people can be substituted when more room is needed on the wheel. This would contribute more to the title from the last episode, The Substitute, also to Locke as well. As we know, he was a substitute for Christian on Ajira 316. He was also a substitute for the nemesis, and then a substitute teacher. When Hurley tells him that Jacob isn't there, he goes into a fury like he's on Jerry Springer or something, and then breaks the mirrors for no reason. Maybe the mirrors aren't important anymore, because as we know, the purpose of the lighthouse is to be able to watch the off-island activity of the candidates, and since there's only 5 candidates left, at least that we know of so far, and they're all on the island, maybe the mirrors are pointless. A little bit later, Jack calms down. Nothing a good staring out at the ocean can't fix. Meanwhile, Jacob appears next to Hurley, and Hurley apologizes for failing the mission, and that Jacob's plan for the person to find the island is totally screwed. But Hurley then realizes that Jacob actually wanted Jack to see what he did. Jacob tells Hurley that it was the only way for Jack to see how important he actually is, and that Jack is there to do something. And to get some people to do stuff, you just have to tell them sometimes, like Hurley, while others, like Jack, you just have to let them look out at the ocean for a while, shed a good tear or two. The last thing Jacob says is that he also wanted to get them out of the temple because someone bad was about to get there, aka Flock. And when Hurley says he wants to warn the others, Jacob's like, nah man, it's too late. But is that the purpose of the lighthouse? Well, one of the ideas across the net is that the lighthouse is actually a portal to be able to view the past, present, and future. Maybe Jacob built or discovered it and wrote down the names of people whose lives that he could see as he turned the wheel. Maybe these people were deemed candidates because by being able to view their past, present, and future, Jacob was able to manipulate them to come to the island by interfering with their lives. Maybe they're crossed off the list when they die or are deemed unworthy of candidacy. The wheel has 360 names, just like a compass has degrees, so essentially each degree has a candidate, but as each name was crossed out, their location would disappear. Maybe the names are crossed out once a candidate achieves its purpose, and not when they die or become irrelevant, because as we know, there's a bunch of people from the wall and this wheel who are alive, but their names are crossed out. Maybe it just means that Jacob is getting closer to the right person. Another idea is that the mirrors could actually be showing the lives of the Flash Sideways losties, and so when a character looks at his own reflection in the mirror, he's actually viewing where his Flash Sideways character is at that moment in the present. As we saw, Jack saw his childhood home, and he was actually there in this Flash Sideways timeline. So who is Wallace, and is he or she the person Jacob says is coming to the island? First off, I don't know if Wallace is even important. Maybe getting Hurley to turn the wheel to 108 had no significance itself, but it was simply the act of getting Jack up there in the lighthouse to see what he saw, to start thinking about whatever Jacob wants him to start thinking about. That being said though, I do think Jacob was telling the truth about someone coming to the island. The first idea is that it's actually Desmond, and who knows, maybe his real last name is Wallace, also a Scottish name like he is. And remember, Miles had a different last name than his parents too. Eloise tells Desmond that the island isn't done with him yet, whether he likes it or not. We also don't know of any Wallaces, and Hume isn't on the cave wall or on the wheel. Hard to believe Desmond wouldn't be up there. His name also has been in the credits throughout this whole season, so we know he's going to play a significant role. Also, he's living on a boat at sea, so his ship will probably inevitably come to the island like course correction, whether he likes it or not. And again, there's like hundreds of ideas out there on who the person could be coming to the island. Some people think it could be Faraday or Hanso or Widmore, or even David or any number of characters from the Flash Sideways timeline, like Jack himself, somehow. But the ones that make the most sense to me are either Desmond or no one at all. Again, maybe it's just like a test to get Jack to see what he saw in the mirrors and for him to realize who he is. Another thing I wanted to touch on more was the different handwriting from last week on the cave wall. Thanks to Maria for the pick. I brought it up a little bit last week, but look at the difference between the 4s and then the K and the O's. So to me, it was definitely written by another person, maybe even the Man in Black. Here's another picture showing the difference between Locke's name and the other main characters' names. And like I talked about last week, Locke is the only name without a dash between the number and the name. Alright, time for this week's game of Gus's Photo Hunt. And congrats to Fata Morgana 84, I think that's how you say it, for winning. You were the first one to guess that this little lion picture actually belonged to this big picture with Locke. So congrats, you won a virtual trophy on our website. And this is the one for this week. Again, I'll try to make it a little bit harder. So what do you guys think it is? Now again, the way to tell me the answer is to make a video response. That's the only way you guys can win. It's just easier for me to tell. Post it as a video response to this video, and the first person to get it wins. You don't have to have the actual photo in your video. As long as you just get on and tell me what it is, that's fine. Okay, now for the unanswered questions for this episode. You know what? This week I'm just going to ask one question that doesn't have to do with the episode. And the question is, what do you guys think will happen in the last scene of Lost? And write down your opinions below in the comments section so we can all talk about and discuss the different ideas. Okay guys, that's it for me. If you want to help me out, I'd really appreciate it if you guys would subscribe to this channel. You can click my link to go to my channel over there and just hit subscribe. It means you get these videos automatically. I'd really like it, really appreciate it. So thanks if you guys do that. Next week's episode is called Sundown. I think it's a Saeed episode. So anyways, I'll see you guys then, and God bless.